Hello, New Story.
Hello, NewStory. We hope you have a blessed day and enjoy the sermon.
Hello, NewStory. We're so glad you could be with us today.
Hello, New Story.
Hello, New Story. Hello, New Story.
Hola, bonjour. Hello, NewStory.
Hello, New Story.
Hello, New Story. What's that sound?
Hi, my name is Lucy, and I'm happy to see you all again.
Hi, church. Welcome to New Story.
Good morning, New Story. It's so great to be with you on this fine Sunday morning. As you've noticed, we're not coming to you live this morning because my wife got COVID this week, and so we're trying to just, out of an abundance of precaution, make sure everyone stays safe, and decided to pre-record our service for this particular morning. She's doing good, recovering. I've been living in the basement all week because I did not test positive, and just trying to stay out of her way as well as care for her, I guess, as much as I can. So with that, just a couple of announcements we wanted to make you aware of. Number one, remember our house parties are coming up. They'll be starting on March 13th. And if you go to the Church Center app, speaking of the Church Center app, if you haven't checked in on the Church Center app, take a moment to check in. Let us know that you're watching the live stream. If you're not familiar with the Church Center app because you're new to New Story, if you go into the App Store, you can find, whether you're Android or iPhone, you can find the Church Center app. It looks like what's on your screen right now. And if you search for New Story Chicago, you'll find us there. And then you'll have access to Church Center, which is where we push out all of our communications and sort of the hub of New Story. Then with that, if you're on Church Center, if you look at the bottom, you can find house parties. You can click on that and sign up for one of the house parties because we want to kind of get a sense of who's going to be attending which house party. Also, Lent is coming up, and so Lent starts March 2nd, Wednesday, March 2nd, and we're going to do an AM ash service and a PM ash service. Where if you want to come get ash on your forehead, if you want to say a prayer, it's going to be very organic and informal, just a place for you to come, sort of center yourself as we enter the Lent season together. And then Tasha is also preparing a daily devotional that will go out each day, so you can sign up for the daily devotional, the Lenten devotional, if you go into Church Center and click on the little bottom right-hand corner where it says More. If you click More, it's going to open a page with a whole bunch of links, and one of those links is to the form for you to fill out to be on our mailing list for the Lenten devotional. So those will come out not on the weekends, just on the weekdays throughout the season of Lent. It'll be a scripture and sort of some reflection questions and prayer. So if you want to join with the rest of the New Story family in solidarity through the Lent season, consider signing up for our Lenten devotional. Also, if it's part of your tradition or if you'd like to make it part of your tradition, feel free also to decide on something to fast, to give up, to let go of during the Lenten season. We're also wanting to continue to plug the mask drive that's happening, and you can see the information on your screen for where you can drop masks off, and there's a QR code there that kind of will give you all the information. But we're really looking to collect children's masks and supplies for sanitary and cleaning for our teachers and our local schools in our neighborhood. And then finally, we just wanted to say welcome to Bo Stephen Johnson, the newest member of the New Story family, who was born this week, to Dan and Rachel. Congratulations, y'all, and we're excited to meet you, Bo, and we're excited that you're here. And so congratulations to the Johnson family. And if you think about them this week, say a prayer for them. There is a meal train that's been going around, so if you're on the meal train, make sure to drop them a meal and drop them a line to say congratulations, and that we're thinking about them and praying for them. So with that, I am going to hand the service off to some of our very talented musicians to lead us into some worship.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me.
You have been so, so good to me.
When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me.
You paid it all, paid it all, paid it all.
You have been so, so kind to me.
You have been so, so. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. All the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no light you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up,
Hi friends, for those of you who don't know, my name is Matt. I am one of the pastors here at NewStory. My pronouns are he and him. So this morning I'm going to be continuing our series titled A Contrarian's Guide to Happiness. And as we take a look this morning at the sixth beatitude, and the sixth beatitude states, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Now, like so many of the Beatitudes, it could be that what we have heard, or that it could be that we've heard them so much that we just sort of fly by them. Or on the other hand, it could be that the case that when we read them, we don't take time to reflect on what Jesus is actually telling us. So what is Jesus saying when he tells us the pure in heart are blessed and they will see God? Does he mean that the pure in heart have some corner on the truth? Does Does this mean that if you have a pure heart, you'll go to heaven? On the initial reading and reflection, I feel like this could be really problematic. I don't know about you, but in my sort of story leading up to this point in the Christian tradition that I was raised in, scriptures like this sometimes trigger me in some ways back to that old evangelical, essentially fundamentalist way of thinking. And anxiety tends to follow when I go there in my mind. On this past Tuesday, we started our small group on James Cone's book, The Cross and the Lynching Tree. Selfless plug, by the way, we've only done 1 week, and we just watched a video of James Cone on YouTube giving a presentation at the 2012 General Conference for the United Methodist Church. And so if you want to still join the small group, you're welcome to. You won't be too far behind. Get the book. We're going to try to read chapter 1 before we meet on Tuesday. So you'd be all caught up from last week if you want to go watch that sermon as well. Welcome you to be a part of the conversation. But that's not what I'm talking about this morning. One of the things that really stood out to me as he talked in his presentation was that for African Americans living in the Jim Crow South particularly, the cross was a source of inspiration and solidarity. And yet for the whites, somehow they used it to justify their white supremacy and racist violence. As we were having our teaching meeting this past week, planning our next sermon series, we were having some conversation around the development of the stories in theology and talking about how you have to walk softly because some of these things can be very divisive as we're thinking through what is New Story's theology and what is it we believe. You have to walk careful, and you have to be careful because this idea of who sees God can become incredibly problematic. As James Cone mentioned, it's easy for one group of folks to allow their theology to take them to one place, and another group of folks allow it to take them to a completely opposite place. Many of the most violent wars in the history of our world were triggered by opposing ideas about God, about who God is, about what God is doing in the world, about what God expects of us. On a micro level, I'm sure all of us could tell stories of how other people's ideas about God, or even our own ideas about God, have led to violence and have been toxic for us. I know for myself, growing up in an evangelical, fundamentalist Christian tradition, I had a lot of fear and anxiety around knowing God and knowing God's will. When your eternal salvation is at stake and knowing the right information about God is crucial to your salvation, it's a big deal. Like, you don't want to get it wrong, right? What if I get it wrong? Does that mean I'm out? I don't get to heaven? What if I miss God or I disappoint God? Or what if what I thought was right was really wrong, and in the end I find myself on the wrong side of the pearly gates? Blessed are the pure in heart, they will know God. What's Jesus telling us? This also raises some other questions for me. Who ultimately gets to decide what God is like? And why do those folks get to decide that? And is the fear and anxiety and abuse of power that can happen, that we've seen over and over again happen by one sort of group claiming the corner on the truth, is that what God has in mind? All of these, I hope that we would collectively answer no, that's not what God has in mind. As Tasha and I have been working on the beginning stages of formulating and clarifying New Story's theology or beliefs, I've been digging into this idea about intersectional theology. Intersectionality is the recognition of multiple identities interlocking with structures of power and oppression. Basically, people experience always and at once their gender, their race, their sexual identity, their ability, their age, their social class, their nation, their religion, right? All of these identities are experienced at one time in every person simultaneously. We're always experiencing all these identities all the time. And these intertwined identities locate people in relation to structures of power and domination. Now that is what is at the heart of intersectionality. So when you look at theology through an intersectional lens, you recognize that our individual identities and our social location directly impact what we're able to see and not see when it comes to God, faith, and religion. Right? Intersectionality reminds us that all of our interlocking identities allow us to see some things but blind us to other things. Well, theologically, then, if you take that intersectional thinking to our theology, it's the same way, that not everyone sees the same thing based on our social location and our different identities and in relation to structures of power. In this, we acknowledge that all theology is done by people, and the experiences and social locations of those people directly impact what they can see or cannot see. And so again, when we think intersectionally, when we're thinking about intersectionality, what we're saying is that we believe it's one person will never have the full perspective, right? We need all of the voices. So within intersectional theology, the goal is to elevate and center marginalized voices who bring an essential perspective that has been silenced by structures of power in society. Let me say that again. Within intersectional theology, the goal is to elevate and center marginalized voices who bring an essential perspective that has been silenced by structures of power within our society. Now, you might be asking, Matt, we started with blessed are the pure in heart, they will see God, and now we're talking about intersectional theology. Like, where do these two things meet? How is this the same? So let me sort of bring it together, because I actually think that this beatitude is absolutely about intersectional theology. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Let's start with this idea of seeing God. It can become really problematic if we confuse seeing God with knowing about God or knowing the truth. From the 3rd chapter of Genesis on, we can see that reaching out for knowledge, particularly the knowledge of what is right and wrong, and elevating right thinking at the expense of relationship can take us to really, really dark places. I tend to approach seeing God more from the perspective of Ignatian spirituality. It is the ability to see God in all things. At its core, it is the belief that God can be found in every person, in every place, and everything. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist and Holocaust survivor, centered his psychology practice on the premise that man's deepest searching is not for pleasure, as Freud contended, but instead the deepest searching of humanity's heart is for meaning. Seeing God in everything and finding meaning in everything, for me, are closely connected and helps us understand what this beatitude might be inviting us into. And so this brings us to the first part of the beatitude, which is blessed are the pure in heart. I don't know how familiar you are with the process of purification, but it is intense, and it's not so much something that you do as it is something that is done to you. No matter what is being purified, the process almost always involves something like shaking and pressure and intense heat. It is as if the fortitude and the courage, the resilience that is shaped in folks as they navigate trials and pain and oppression and exclusion gives them the ability to see God in things that people of privilege are blind to. Pop culture quiz. You can answer this in the comments section. Do you know what a thestral is? Do you know what a thestral is? I'm just going to give a couple seconds, give people time to answer. What is a thestral? Quick hint, if you don't know, they exist only in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. So the thestral was a breed of winged horse with a skeletal body. The face had reptilian features and wide, sort of leathery wings that would resemble maybe like a bat. But what was unique about the thestral was that they could only be seen by people who had seen death and gained an emotional understanding of what death meant. To most folks, the thestrals were simply invisible, unseen. In the books, Harry's friend Luna sees them from the very beginning because she witnessed her mother's death. Even after Harry sees Cedric killed, he wasn't able to see them until he accepted the tragic event. But once he accepted the tragic event and processed it, he was able to see the thestrals as well. So what do thestrals and intersectional theology have to do with this beatitude? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Even as I say it there, are you starting to get the picture? Maybe we should read the beatitude this way. Blessed are those whose hearts have been purified by trial, pain, and oppression, for they will have an expansive vision of God at work in the world. Let me say that again. Blessed are those whose hearts have been purified by trial, by pain, and oppression, for they will have an expansive vision of God at work in the world. In this beatitude, Jesus is inviting us to center marginalized voices, as they are the ones who have the capacity to enlarge our understanding of what God is doing in the world. Jesus is inviting us to center marginalized voices, as they are the ones who have the capacity to enlarge our understanding of what God is doing in the world. If you think about it, this is not new for how God operates. From Moses to Hannah, from Ruth and Naomi to Esther, from Mary, the mother of Jesus, to Mary Magdalene, from Malcolm to Martin, from James Cone to Shaniqua Walker Barnes, from Richard Allen to Frederick Douglass, from Du Bois to Maddie Fisher, God has been centering marginalized voices, inviting them to give us an expansive picture of what God is doing in the world. God is constantly elevating these voices to invite the world to see God at work in ways we would otherwise be blind to. Blessed are those whose hearts have been purified by trial, pain, and oppression, for they will have an expansive vision of God at work in the world. It seems fitting that in Black History Month we would acknowledge the intersectional nature of Jesus' theology and the need to center and listen to the prophetic voices of those whose hearts have been purified to see with unique clarity what God is up to in our world. So what do we do with this? Well, let's start by examining our own hearts. In what ways has your heart been purified? Is it possible that there are undealt with resentments that you're holding on to? As James Cone says, hatred always does violence to the hater, but not necessarily to the hated. And once we've examined our own hearts, can we examine also our influences? Who are the voices in your life helping you or even challenging you to see God in ways you would otherwise be blind to? Have you intentionally centered marginalized voices, giving them authority, or are you stuck in an echo chamber, surrounded by voices that see the world and God at work in the world just like you do? Think about your Spotify playlist or your bookshelf, the podcasts you listen to and the friends you hang around. Are you in an echo chamber? Or have you surrounded yourself with people who have pure hearts and can see God in new and different and beautiful ways? And then finally, once you've examined your heart and you've examined your influences, become intentional. Right? Once you've done the inventory, start to set some goals. In what ways are you intentionally going to step out of your echo chamber? Where will you start? Will you start by listening to a new podcast or reading some new books or finding some organizations that you can go be present and serve with that can help center other voices in your orbit to expand your vision of what God is up to in the world? And then who in your life knows those goals and can help hold you accountable to stick to it? Blessed are those whose hearts have been purified by trial and pain and oppression, for they will have an expansive vision of God at work in the world. May we be a church committed to being in relationship with and listening to the voices of folks who are different than us, whose experiences are different than us, and whose social location, based on their intersecting identities, have purified their hearts in ways that they are able to see God in ways that we would otherwise be blind to. May we be a church committed to intersectional theology. Because, friends, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Thank you.
Children lost and bleeding will see slavery bow to freedom and the sick restored to healing. So we fight for those who've fallen and we take back what's been stolen from our family, shamed and broken. Hope will rise, hearts will open, we'll see joy defeat depression, liberation from addiction. For when we are at our weakest, your presence, lifting up the name of Jesus, a strong tower meant to save us, and now nothing will defeat us. We are boldly interceding for our children lost and